A Brahmin is sometimes offered land and cows in charity, and thus, for his livelihood, he may act in the same way as the Vaishya, by cultivating land, giving protection to cows, and trading off the surpluses. A better process, however, is to pick up grains from a field or from a dealer's shop without begging. Right? So they're showing the different levels of what one should do, because see, when you're dealing with Pramrita, with the farming, then it's specifically designed for Vaishyas, right? Because the difficulty that Brahmins can do, but the problem is that as a livelihood that one's doing for oneself, is that in Pramrita means that many living entities get killed, right? Bacteria, bugs, worms, like this, like that. But since it's designed for Vaishyas, then there's no problem there. But for the Brahmin, then there may be a problem. So he can do it if he wants, and if it's not a difficulty. But if not, then these other occupations are considered better, right? Because the whole idea, it's not about the social prestige, position, and all that. It's about being able to absorb oneself in one's studies and teaching. Because if you're taking care of the cows and taking care of the land, then that's going to take time. And since the main occupation of a Brahmin is studying and teaching, it will take away from that. Like, but for, let's say, the Vaishya, his occupation is taking care of the cows and the land. So it doesn't take away from his occupation. Does that make sense? It is his occupation. But for the Brahmana, it's supposed to be studying and teaching, so it will take away from that. That's why it's considered. But it's fine. Right? It's fine. So those things that have no trouble, like we said, picking up grains from the field or from a dealer's shop without begging. Because when you beg, then what is it? What is begging called? Picking up grains is satyana. No, yes, it is rita. Maybe it's from. Yeah, I'm mixing them up. So how do you say it? Begging means you can be insulted because someone may not give. But when you go to the field or to the dealer's shop, then it's unwanted. You're taking it, you're completely free. You're comfortable that no one wants this, therefore I can take it. Right? But otherwise, begging means people may have an ownership of it, and they may not want to give, or they may give with some kind of pride or some attitude of superiority, or so many other aspects are there. Though it's good for generating humility, that's why the brahmacharis go and beg. They don't go and glean from the field, right? Because it's about making them humble. But for the Brahmin, since he's independent, then this is considered the best. Right? And then, if that doesn't work, then he begs. And if that doesn't, then he can do this. Or some, if they want more, they can do a combination. Like that. Like that. It just depends upon how much facility he feels he requires. So in other words, he requires more, then he has to do more occupations. Because one occupation only gives a certain amount. Because when you beg, there's only so many houses you go to in certain areas like this. Text 17. Except in time of emergency, lower persons should not accept the occupation and duties of those who are higher. When there is such an emergency, of course, everyone but the Kshatriya may accept the means of livelihood of others. Right? Because Kshatriyas, their business is to protect. So whatever situation they're in, they're going to do that. Just like Krishna told Arjuna. You go out to the forest, say, I'm giving up this Kshatriya life, I'll live the life of a simple Brahmin. He says, but you'll see some injustice, or there'll be too many animals that are bothering the sages, and you will fight. You will do your Kshatriya activities. So that's why the Kshatriya, they just don't do others. Right? It's just not the thing to do. It means if you're talking about the mentality of that. Others can do for a short time, but there has to be the right attitude. In other words, it's not thinking, yes, I am this. No, we're doing this because someone else is not doing it. Right? Prabhupada mentioned, in India that we're doing all these Brahminical works and everything like that because the Brahmins aren't doing it. If the Brahmins were doing it, then we just have to be Vaishnavas and humble and do simple, things, that's all. We just do our, Harinam and chanting and going to the temple for artik and taking prasad and we're done, right? But we do more because the Brahmins aren't doing it. So basically like that. Does that make sense? Purport. The occupational duty of a Brahmana should not be accepted by persons in lower social orders, especially Vaishyas and Shudras. For example, an occupational duty of the Brahmanas is to teach Vedic knowledge, but unless there's an emergency, this professional duty should not be accepted by the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras. Right? So, professional duty means that you're going and you're getting charity for that and things like that. That one is preaching, right, as part of one's sadhana, as part of one's devotional, that anyone can do, because that's devotional service. So we have to understand is that how we maintain ourselves, that's the consideration. Right? Does that make sense? That's then what has to be seen. But otherwise, discussing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and that's just part of one's sadhana. That everybody does. Right? So we have to be able to discriminate here between varna and ashram, because much of the time that gets confusing. Right? Does that make sense? And how the ashram aspect is the sadhana of the Brahman and is his occupation. Even a Kshatriya cannot accept the duties of a Brahman unless there's an emergency. And then, even if he does so, he should not accept charity from anyone else. Sometimes Brahmanas protest against our Krishna conscious movement for creating Brahmanas from Europeans, or in other words, from Mlechas and Yavanas. Interesting. From Europeans, or in other words. This movement, however, is here supported in Srimad Bhagavatam. At the present moment, society is in a chaotic situation, and everyone has given up the cultivation of spiritual life, which is especially meant for the Brahmanas. Because spiritual culture has been stopped all over the world, there is now an emergency, and therefore it is now time to train those who are considered lower and condemned, so that they may become Brahmanas and take up the work of spiritual progress. The spiritual progress of human society has been stopped, and this should be considered an emergency. Here is solid support from Narad Muni of the movement known as Krishna consciousness. So that's how we fit in. Right? Because we're doing devotional service, that gives us that position. But it's not that we have the material qualifications for it. Does that make sense? We always have to remember is that we're not our body, we're not our conditioning, but the conditioning is our conditioning, is the conditioning, right? We're not the body, but we have to logically and intelligently understand that the body is the body. Right? No? I'm not my car, but is the car the car? Yeah. So I'm not my mind, but the mind is the mind. The intelligence is the intelligence. The false ego is the false ego. That remains. We just take it that I'm not the body, so it throws everything out. Very clever. No, I'm not the body means I, the soul, am not the body, but the body's the body, so the body's going to act how the body acts. It's not going to do something else. It's not that I'm not the body, so I can go on the roof like our man from Assisi and then fly. Right? Right. So the point is the body can only do what it does. So because of the nature, then we're trained. So what we're doing is we're taking the ashram aspect that develops because of devotional service and applying that across as the Brahminical. It's not that we have the nature of the Brahminical. Right? Because otherwise it would be more natural. Right? Because Mlecha and Yavana is pretty natural, so it's not Brahminical. Right? So does that make sense? So any living entity by devotional service then comes to the Brahminical platform because they're interested in Brahman, in Krishna, who's the supreme Brahman. Right? So of Brahmins, therefore Vaishnavas are the best. They're the supreme Brahmanas because they're interested in the supreme Brahman, which is Bhagavan. Then from that platform, then as devotional service, they are preaching. Right? So that anyone can do. Does this make sense? So this is how it mechanically works. In time of emergency, one may accept any of the various types of professions known as Rita, Amrita, Mrita, that's it, begging is Mrita, Pramrita, and Satyanrita. But one should not at any time accept the profession of a dog, Slavrita. The profession of Unchashila, collecting grains from the field, is called Rita. Collecting without begging is called Amrita. Begging grains is called Mrita. Tilling the ground is called Pramrita, and trade is called Satyanrita. Engaging in the service of low-grade persons, however, is called Svavriti, the profession of the dogs. Specifically, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas should not engage in the low and abominable service of Shudras. Brahmanas should be well acquainted with all Vedic knowledge, and Kshatriyas should be well acquainted with the worship of the demigods. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagasha. The four divisions of human society were created by the Supreme Lord according to the three modes of material nature, and the work ascribed to them. Yeah, so this is important. These four divisions were created by the Supreme Lord according to the modes of material nature. So the point is we're not the body. We can function on the transcendental, but the body is going to act according to the modes of nature. Doesn't matter who you are. Even you're a transcendentalist, your body's still managed by the modes of nature, because Maya makes it work. But the difference is, as is given, is it's like the example of the cat. You know, is it a kitten or is it a rat? Right? So in other words, for these great devotees, the great saintly persons, who are on the transcendental platform, they're not really worried about the body. They're just worried about Krishna consciousness. Maya takes care of the body. Right? So it goes and does everything that it should do because she's taking care of it. So that's like the kitten. But if we're controlled by the modes, that means they're not controlled by the modes, but the body is still managed by the modes. Because what else are you going to manage the body with? You understand? There isn't something else. In the material world, you only have the modes of nature that make things function. But it's whether you're controlled by them or you're transcendental to them. So someone who's transcendental is not the body, but the body is still controlled by the modes. That means the body still functions according to its natural position. Does that make sense? Yeah. But, as we said, since the service to the Lord is the transcendental position, that anyone can do. But if you step outside of that, then it's going to be according to your ability. Does that make sense? Someone can have spiritual realization, be able to explain the philosophy and everything very nicely, but that doesn't mean it improves his ability, let's say, cooking or preaching or how to drive a car or how he puts on his clothes. Does that make sense? So that will remain. You know, you can it'll be purified, but it'll still remain. Does that make sense? Yeah. Formally, so we have to understand it's created by Krishna. So this idea is that, oh, we're devotees, we're transcendental. Yes, the soul is transcendental, but not. And that we don't have to follow this, but the whole point is who's made it? Krishna. So where does the thing come where we don't have to follow the authority? We do as we like. Basically, if you go back to the French Revolution, that's when it started. The so-called Age of Enlightenment. That there's a concept that there's such a thing as a secular state. That we can do things that have nothing to do with God consciousness, right? I have my morning program, I have my sadhana, that's I'm a devotee, but the rest of the day, it's secular. It's you know, I'm just being practical, I'm being real. No, that's totally unreal. Real is the morning program. If one doesn't see Krishna consciousness in one's life in the day, that's unreal. But due to illusion, due to the mode of ignorance, ignorance means you always get it backwards. Right becomes wrong, wrong becomes right. Right? So that's the point. Right. So That's why then you have to be very, very careful. Because something that is the Vedas are saying, something that Prabhupada's saying, people don't like it, that's because of the mode of ignorance. And we can't pander to the mode of ignorance. You can train, you can cultivate, you can try to present things nicely so that someone in the mode of ignorance can appreciate. But you can't say the position of the mode of ignorance is okay, is correct. That itself is the mode of ignorance. And why would you want to do that? Because you want to be socially accepted. That's the mode of passion. So we notice in here mode of goodness doesn't even come into the conversation. It's not part of the equation here. Therefore, it's not something to be done. You have to be very careful. Yes?
I want to ask you, the devotees that some day of occupation they are going there something to the karmic world, then they can argue that anyway I have to in some way be together with these people, that I have to take some rules if they are following and stuff.
That's the logika. That's just the local rules. Like, you cross the street where the zebra crossing is, you drive on the same side of the road that they drive on. You park in a parking place and pay what do you call it, for the parking and stuff like that. And, you stop at the lights and do all those kind of things. Funny part is what I've just mentioned is one of the things that's sometimes very hard for devotees to do. They're not famous for doing this. And then they say, oh, we just have to fit in. But then fit in. Fit in. No, but just fit in the way I would fit in. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if someone puts on karmic clothes, what karmic clothes do they put on? Do they put on what fits into the society as an accepted cultured way, or they fit in according to their own modes of nature, according to their own conditioning and what they like to wear? I remember we were one of the temples one day and we were going out, and one of the temple devotees, he was wearing his pants and stuff, and he went to find his shoes. Someone had taken them. So he had a second set of shoes, but they didn't match the outfit. Oh, was he freaking out? Totally. I mean, they were black. They could have gone with anything, but he wanted to wear the blue ones because that was just the perfect arrangement. Oh, he was, for 5-10 minutes, totally just freaking out. Couldn't go out, and this and that. And so what's that? That's the modes of nature. That's not called fitting in. That's called fitting into Maya, not fitting into the society. Otherwise, then, what's fitting in? What are you supposed to dress like? What are you supposed to look like? Does that make sense? So the point is are we trying to fit in? So what's our motive in fitting in? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to fit in according to how we would be respected, and then respected in which group? Because when we say, the Western culture, which one? You know what I'm saying? It's just like here. Just you go a little bit more to the east, and then your neighbor's over there. You want to fit in with them? Right? Any country, north, south, east, west, do they want to fit in with the guys next to them? No. Do they identify with them? No. So what is this fitting in that people are talking about? It's an illusion. What it means is, I'm comfortable fitting into the society where I was, where I grew up. No one goes back and no one goes to something else. You know what I'm saying? They fit in wherever it's their condition. Does that make sense? So all it is just, that's how it is. So it's not a matter of, it's a matter of intelligence. And a matter of, okay, what would be out of the society, what would be an accepted generic dress that people would respect? And behavior that they would respect.
I feel comfortable.
That's all, it's what I feel comfortable in. So my fitting in is what makes me comfortable, not what makes the society comfortable. I'm presenting it, oh, the society is uncomfortable with us, I have to fit in. No, it's, I'm uncomfortable. So you understand? So this is mode of passion. This is not goodness. Goodness is, okay, I'm in it, what you're mentioning. I'm going to work, I have to fit in there. What am I supposed to wear? You know, do they want a tie? Is it casual? You know, is it a suit? You know, what is it that fits in with that scene and would be progressive? So if you're working in a business, the more sharp you dress, the better you'll do in a company. But how many devotees you know dress sharp? Go ahead. If you got 5 fingers on one hand, that should be enough. Knock me out. Go ahead. You got a name? Right? I know 2 that I could say. Like that. And they're both in Australia. Strangely enough. Like that. Actually, there's a 3rd one, and they're also in Australia. So that's the whole thing. Is that so? Who's looking? Who is fitting into the society the way society would like to see them, and who's fitting the society the way they'd like to be? Right? You have to make a balance, of course. You have to fit into the position according to where you're comfortable. But you have to start from authority and come down. You don't start from yourself. Right? So the same principle that Manu gives. You start with Shruti, then Smriti, then the Acharyas, and you know, leading personalities, and then yourself. Then you have to still follow the same thing. Okay, well, what's the accepted, you know, from the authorities in the Western kind of scene? You know, and then what's the, and so then what do I am comfortable with? Does that make sense? You know, it's just like it's mentioned, just like even you're wearing a thing. I was seeing the other day. There's a difference. Means we see people wearing suits, right? Black suits, gray suits. What do you call it? Black, gray, blue, the dark blue. You know, with stripes, without stripes, these kind of things like that. We just think it's arbitrary. But for those who are functioning in that, no, it's not. Depending on what you want to get done, you wear the particular thing. It's a matter of authority and establishing yourself, you wear the blue. You know, it's just, you know, you want to look good and solid, you wear the black. You want people to feel comfortable with you as a person, you wear the browns, the natural colors. So people who do this, like lawyers, depending upon what part of the case they're in, and who they're, like when they deal with the client, they wear the brown, or they wear those kind of things, the gray, you know, the natural. When they're making the first, you know, the opening statement and that, they wear the black. When they're doing the final statement, they wear the blue. You ever heard of this? Anyone heard of this? You heard of it. Yeah, so this is the society that we're saying we're going to fit into. Who's fitting in?
It's the same with the tie also.
Okay, depending on the tie, yeah, the stripes, and whether they're angled or whether there's this and that, yeah. So it's a whole package. That's the Western culture. That's the culture that actually runs the world and makes things function. So are we fitting into that? What devotee you know does that? So that's a whole... And what did Prabhupada have devotees wear in the 60s when they wore army clothes? Suits. So Prabhupada knew how to fit in. Either wear a Vaishnava gentleman or a Western gentleman. You know, so that was the concept. So what I'm meaning here is, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, you know. But my point is we're not following the Vedic principle of starting with the authority and then coming down to our position that we're comfortable with. Right? You know, it's just like we start with the Vedic authority on what's the tradition. Now, if somebody wears a shirt, somebody doesn't wear a shirt, someone wears the chadar, someone wears this kind of chadar, that kind of chadar. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of variety, so the individual finds what they're comfortable with. But it's based on authority. So,
you fit into the society based on the authority of the society itself. Does that make sense? And even if you dress according to that, you can go to places that people may think you're weird. You understand? So that's also a point. Then it's a matter, are you fitting into what they want to see you in? Or it's just what you want to be in? I knew one gentleman in Calcutta, high top society. And depending on where he was, he dressed. He comes to the temple, he's in dhoti and kurta, first class, paka, like that. He's out with businessmen, he's in that particular kind of, they would wear these, what they call safari suits. These kind of suits with these pockets in it. I don't know, it's from the British or something. Something you wear when it's hot, it's tropical, like that. Then when he was doing something else, these big charity events and that are more Western, then he'd be in a regular suit. So he would exactly dress according to the situation. He was successful. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing. We're not dressing. It's not that, okay, we're down there, we're going to deal down in a particular area of town, so we get out our ripped jeans and our chains and everything like that. Okay, then you fit in there. But then when they go to another part of town, generally the devotee wears the same thing. No, he should be wearing something different. Does that make sense? So what would that mean? That would mean you'd have to know, you'd have to make the endeavor, and you'd have to spend money. You know what I'm saying? I remember it was very interesting when in one of our big Western communities, devotees would go down to the shop. There's a big supermarket and, there's a whole shopping complex just, next to the community. You could always tell the devotee. They're wearing karmic clothes, but you always know it's a devotee. Because the baggy t-shirts and the sloppy pants and everything like that. And the karmis, they knew these are devotees. So since they know you're devotees anyway, you might as well wear the devotional outfit. But it's not that they think, it's fitting in or don't know. Everybody knows who's a devotee. Yes?
Even in India, South India, they're using just loom, and they don't have the upper part. In the north, they use the dhoti, and then they have the north, they have the muslim, and there is a covering head in the north. So it's even in India, how you fit in if you want to fit in.
Yeah. So does that make sense? So in other words, the principle has to be taken, which is to be a gentleman. Right? Then the secondary is what that looks like. What actually accomplishes it. Not what I feel like, and therefore what accomplishes what I feel like. Right? So what you're dealing with is you have Prabhupada mentions it quite often, but generally it's not something that's caught. Have you ever heard of the Icha Kriya and Jnana Shaktis? Right? No. Yes. So, Icha Shakti, because these are the Shaktis that make everything work. So the Icha Shakti is Krishna's desire. So Krishna is the Lord of the Icha Shakti. Then Balaram is expansion. He's the Lord of the Kriya Shakti. That means the actual accomplishment of something. In other words, I'm going to accomplish that secondary action, the Kritatva. That will be done by the Kriya Shakti. Right? Does that make sense? So Balaram accomplishes all the environments and facilities that is for Krishna's pleasure. But it's actually the exchange of love that is the point of the Icha. And then the Jnana Shakti, that is controlled by Vasudeva, Mahanarayana. Right? And that creates the environment. The basis is an atmosphere of sweetness, an atmosphere of majesty, that whole kind of basis. Do you see? So then you have that aspect, the basis is there, then the activities that are there, and then the Icha, which is actually for Krishna's pleasure. So what we've done here, because we've been discussing for a few days of how nowadays the authority is all about what I feel like, what I want. So what are we talking here? Do we see what's happened? Instead of it being Krishna's Icha, Krishna's desire, it's my Icha. And therefore, whatever might, because the Jnana and Kriya Shaktis, they simply are serving the Icha Shakti. They're not doing something independent. The independent is the Icha Shakti. So then, see what's happened? Because I have the desire, therefore the Kriya and Jnana Shaktis should just follow that. That's the authority. I feel like it, and everyone should just go, throw up their hands and go, oh. Right? We see what's happened here? This is how we get into the material world. And Maya is so clever, she can just slip it in and we don't even see it. Yes?
Are these Shaktis, are they somehow connected with Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan?
Yeah, Jnana is Sambandha, Kriya is Abhideya, and Icha is Prayojan. So when you're looking at the energies from this angle, in other words, all these different things, internal, external, these are all aspects of looking at the same energy. Because the Sup Shakti is one energy. And it has all these various features. So since Krishna is the Lord of threes, then you can look at all his energies from all these categories of three. So it's the same thing, but it's different aspects of the same thing. Does that make sense? Yes.
I'm hearing this rasa and tattva. Is it like free to put it into two, or is it totally different thing? Rasa and tattva. I'm hearing sometimes somebody says, oh, there's rasa and there's tattva.
Yeah, no, there's rasa and tattva.
So how it would
But
be?
3 comes back to 2. 3 means there's interaction. So tattva will be Sankarshan, and rasa will be Prajumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. You still end up with 3. Okay. So, okay, so that's the difficulty. When it's based on people's feelings and all that exclusively, you know, in other words, feelings have to be there because we're people. But if that's all it is, then what we're doing is we're replacing Krishna's Icha with our Icha. And because Icha is the primary energy fulfilling Krishna's desire, right? That's the supreme position. So then we think because I have a desire, everybody else and everything should fall into place behind my desire. Right? But the problem is everybody has a desire, so therefore there's conflict. Yes.
So how do I know I am really purified with the conditioning of the public names and the conditioning of my names, but my consciousness is not really, I'm not disturbed by this?
Yes, we're not disturbed by it. Just like, let us say we're a gross materialist, okay? Then here's the floor. Let's say we're a total transcendentalist. Here's the floor. So, are you disturbed by it? The floor is doing floor stuff. Is it a problem? Right? What is that? You know, the floor, materialist is there, it's their house, it's their floor, it's everything like that. The devotee, it's Krishna's floor, because the floor is there, you know, you don't end up, you know, in Australia or something. Right? Because if we fell through the floor, then, you know, you might pop up in Perth or Sydney or something.
For example, this example with the shoes.
Right.
It was his conditioning to wear exactly the shoes with the clothes.
Yeah.
So if he would be beautiful, okay, so he has the conditioning of the body, but mine wouldn't be disturbed with this.
No, wouldn't be disturbed. The point is the material world's always going to be a problem. So it's a matter, are we disturbed by it or not? And if there is a disturbance, what's the disturbance? Okay, now technically, if we want to look at this from a more Krishna conscious point of view, what would be the problem with the shoes not matching? Right? It means if other people would think this doesn't match and this is a problem, so then they may not take them as seriously. Right? But, so it's about that. But he's thinking of it that I will socially look stupid because my shoes don't match. Right? They matched on the level that I was looking at it from. That if you had black shoes, they'll go with anything. So it's fine, but it's formal. And he was a teenager at the time, and formal just doesn't fly. So it had to be the blue ones. So even though the adults would have thought, okay, he looks fine, but the other teenagers would have thought he was an idiot. And he didn't want to be an idiot, socially, amongst the teenagers. But the point was, I think we were going out to the shop to buy potatoes or something, So I mean, it's not a problem. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like we were going to go down to the corner where all the kids are skateboarding and try to preach. You know what I'm saying? So the whole point is it's not that things aren't considered, but it's which angle is considered from. Right? That's the whole point. That's what is your purpose? What's your ultimate goal? So his goal in this was to look socially cool. Well, the actual purpose was to go out and go to the shop to get something for Krishna. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't. Does that make sense? So you have to see what's the intention. That's why we were saying the prajumna aspect is important. Because even we know the mechanics, right? We learn all the mechanics, but unless the attitude is right, what are we going to get? And attitude being right means, is it connected to Krishna? Otherwise, how do you get the primary? Right? We're not materialists where pious materialists where, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha are our goal. And therefore, we're following our duties to get all those things in between. Right? That's light years beyond our conditioning. Right? What we're dealing with is just, is it about yourself or is it about Krishna? And so if it's about Krishna, then you'll see how will this work for Krishna. And it will accommodate your conditioning. You have to accommodate the conditioning. So that's the whole point. We're not saying you don't. Does that make sense? So it functions, it fits in. So we do fit in. But the point is it has to be a balance, and we have to know which is primary. So primary is what will please Krishna, and the secondary is what forms we're comfortable with using according to our conditioning and duties to accomplish that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So then we have to balance all that. But where do you start? We don't start with ourselves. We start with Krishna. Because when we start with ourselves, it's guaranteed it's going to be mixed devotional service on a good day. Does that make sense? We start with Krishna and then we see ourselves in relation to that. Then that can come out as pure devotion. So you can have two people doing exactly the same thing, but one is pure devotion, one is mixed devotion. It just depends on the mentality, where they're starting from. Does that make sense?
We just have to start somewhere and purify.
Yes, you have to start somewhere and purify. So even if you're starting with yourself, the point is connect it to Krishna. And then you'll become purified. But you have to be clear that its connection to Krishna is what is the good part. So in other words, the pure devotion is the good part, not the mixed. So we may be doing mixed devotional service, but we know pure devotional service is the standard. Does that make sense? Let's just say, let's say someone wants to be engaged or try out for the Olympics. Okay. So now, how do they set their standards? By what the world record is, or by what they're doing now? You understand?
You have to go by the world record. Otherwise, you know, if the world record in pole vaulting is, I don't know, 16 or 18 feet and you're doing 14 feet, you can't say, well, this is good. You know, it's just not going to work. But he starts at 14 and figures out how to get it up to 18. Does that make sense? So that's the point, is that we may be doing pure mixed devotional service. That's not the problem. The problem is if we don't have the goal as pure devotional service. In other words, the Purushartha is pure devotional service. And the Kritatva is the mixed devotional service. So we're going to go through these steps in mixed devotional service to get ourselves to pure devotional service. Because we know that's there. Because if you don't know the goal, you don't get there. You don't get anywhere you don't have. Right? Another important aspect of goals is that goals are what enable one to get over obstacles. Like you have a goal, and an obstacle comes up, you can get around the goal. I mean, get around the obstacle. You don't have a goal, an obstacle comes up, it's the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're enthusiastic and that, obstacles come up, it doesn't bother you. But when you're not feeling enthusiastic, anything comes up, it's a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's the end of the world, right? You know, it's like that. You're engaged in something, you're enthusiastic. Your nose is starting to get a little wet, so you go over to the Kleenex box, you grab the tissue that's there, you pull it out, and it's the last one. So, okay, then you just either fold it up or go find another box. But if it's a bad day, and you go and pull that, oh no, so then, you're ready to go back to bed over a tissue. Right? You understand? So that's because there's no goal. So that's the whole point in goal setting, is because goals then give you direction, and so you're able to function. So that's why also that's the point in leadership, is to be able to inspire, but inspire based on the goal. Because that's you're going to have something sustainable, and that's what you're going to have develop maturity. If it's just a matter of enthusing them, and then they do, and then it's over, and then it's back to normal, then that was partial leadership, in that it was good management. But it wasn't real leadership in that you're training the people what's an actual goal, and so therefore then with time they have that enthusiasm themselves, and they become a leader and are able to inspire others. Does that work? Okay. Formally, the principle of dividing human society into four sections, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, was strictly followed, but because of gradual neglect of the Varnasrama principles, Varnashankara population developed, and the entire institution has now been lost. In this age of Kali, practically everyone is a Shudra, Kalau Shudra Sambhava. Right? So when we say Shudra, we always have to understand it's being nice, because Shudra is still human. Right? All it means is that Shudra means someone who's too absorbed in the material energy and laments about the situations that come up. Right? As opposed to seeing the philosophical or the duties first. You understand? Brahman has his knowledge, and so there may be obstacles, difficulties, but you just get it done. Kshatriya is the same, Vaishya is the same, right? Economics is there, you want to make it happens. But Shudra means when an obstacle comes up, everything's finished. You understand? That's why it's considered the lowest of the four. Not that the occupation itself or anything like that is. The Vedic is all based on consciousness. So one laments over everything rather than doing something, because if you lament, is anything happening? There's emotions and there's feelings, but is anything accomplished? No, there has to be a goal. Unless your goal is to lament, then of course, then it's getting done. But, the point is if you have something, then you'll just push on.
Because it's only through action that you get results. Lamentation doesn't give any results. It's never given in any time. Like that. It can get some emotional results, but it doesn't get any physical results. Does that make sense? So that's why the Shudra is considered on that. So when you drop below Shudra, right into Varnasrama and like that, they still have this point of lamentation. So that therefore that's the common ground, is that Shudra and below have that mentality. But Shudra, we have to remember, is human. And when we drop below into Shankara, then much of the time you're not necessarily dealing with human. Right? Because the values, the methods, and that aren't human. So that makes sense? Yes?
Rajan, back to my question I asked yesterday about at what moment term Varna is attributed to a human being. You just said that Shudra is human.
Yes.
And my question yesterday was is the term Varna, in this case Shudra, attributed to a human or a human being? And yesterday you said that
It's doing both here.
Yeah.
Because when we just say generically everyone is Shudra, right? So we know that a lot are lower than Shudras, right? So that means they have that common element of Shudra means one who laments.
I get it.
But actual Shudra will be one who follows the Vedic culture, and someone who has that mentality and doesn't follow the Vedic culture, that would be Shankara. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's why we're saying that Shudra means they're still human, they accept the Vedic culture. Okay. And finding anyone who's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya is very difficult. Although the Krishna conscious movement is a movement of Brahmins and Vaishnavas, it is trying to establish the divine Varnashram institution. For without this division of society, there cannot be peace and prosperity anywhere. And so, without this, as I said, you can't have social peace and prosperity. Because people want peace, they want prosperity, but what is that based on? That's based on the social environment. I have a peaceful environment in which I can be prosperous, right? Gain and safety, right? Let us say, except for a few people, when there's war, is the society prosperous?
No.
Right? Because there's no peace, there's no guarantee. Right? So when there's peace, then you see, right? You've heard this term, emerging middle class. You use that here, right? So, but emerging middle class, they're speaking about it as if it's just now happening. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati talked about the emerging middle class. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his works talks about the emerging middle class. You understand? So in other words, when there's peace and therefore prosperity, then a middle class emerges. Otherwise, if there's not peace, then there's only rich and poor. You understand? And only times when there's peace, then you have middle class. Does that make sense? So that's how it works. And so the middle class, because when they come out like this, then they have some elements of the it means, in other words, they have kind of the desire and sophistication of the upper class, but they have the, desires, means, and facilities, but the nature in that they tend to have of the lower class. Otherwise, why does the middle class go against authority? Why they don't want to follow any rules and regulations? Why do they want to be independent? The upper class doesn't do that. They understand there's authority, I have to follow it. I'm a big businessman, but there's a bigger businessman. I go to one of these dinners, I have to be respectful. Like that. Middle classes, why do I have to be respectful? Oh, that's so false, and that's so, how you say, artificial, and, You understand? These kind of things come out of the mouths of the middle class. They don't come out of the rich, they don't come out of the poor. You understand? So the difficulty in the breaking down of the society is generally this middle class. Because they're educated, but not enough. They have culture, but not enough.
right? And they have money, but in their mind, definitely not enough. You understand? So this becomes a problem. So there can't be peace and prosperity unless you divide it like this, because then you know what you're doing. How can you be peaceful if you don't know what you're supposed to do? Right? If you don't know what you're supposed to do, you feel uneasy. If you know exactly what you're supposed to do, you feel comfortable. If you really know what you're supposed to do and committed to it, then you feel very confident and active, dynamic. So the Vedic system is, how can everybody know what they're supposed to do and do it? So it's not a matter of prestige. It's a matter of what your conditioning is, and therefore what you work with. Does that make sense? Like that. But because of the Kali Yuga, people then take everything as prestige. And so therefore it makes it very difficult to make anything work. Okay, 21. The symptoms of a Brahmana are control of the mind, control of the senses, austerity and penance, cleanliness, satisfaction, forgiveness, simplicity, knowledge, mercy, truthfulness, and complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. In the institution of Varnasrama Dharma, the symptoms of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi are all described. The ultimate aim is a Chutatmatvam, to always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna or Vishnu. To make advancement in Krishna consciousness, one has to become a Brahmana with the above-mentioned symptoms. Right? So, in other words, as we said, by ashram, all devotees are Brahmanas, so they have to try for these. It's not that they're separately tried for. It means that in the performance of your service, you're going to have times when you need to control the mind, need to control the senses, need to be austere, the penance is there. Cleanliness, satisfaction, forgiveness. All these things come up naturally. You practice them when they come up. You don't have to separately practice them. Is that make sense?
Only my ashram, performing the devotional service.
Yes. Means, in other words, through devotional service, we can cultivate these sort of things from the ashram side, because it's spiritual. Ashram means spiritual, varna means social. Then, because that's developed, then we can actually function within the social system. Then we can actually take up those. Does that make sense? So here. So, as Prabhupada points out, this complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Achyutatmatvam, that's the most important quality, because of Vaishnava, like that. Then technically, of the next, of a Brahman, forgiveness is actually the main quality. That's brought out, I think Manu brings it out in Mahabharata. Yes.
So if we are not cultivating the Vaishnava attitude, we are not a good devotee, that we are pushing to the platform of Varna, which is our nature.
Yes, and the problem is that we push over. It's like this. We can be up in the ashram, right? And that works nicely. And Brahminical, but if we don't function in that, and we move over to Varna, then we find that we kind of like drop below the system. So you have Varna, ashram, and then us. You understand? So that's the thing that we have to be very careful about, is that our ability to function as a human being comes because of devotional service, right? Because when you purify the consciousness, you purify the whole system, right? Because our conditioning is based on the 24 elements, right? So the elements are the same, right? It's not that when you become a devotee, the earth element in your body changes, or the air, or the water, or the mind, or the intelligence, the ego, right? They don't change. It's not that I become a devotee and my eyesight improves, right? Before, when you were a karmi, you had to wear glasses. Now, as a devotee, you don't have to wear glasses anymore. You understand? So, in other words, the 24 elements are the same. But out of that 24, one of them you can change. That's the polluted consciousness, the chitta. That's the importance of samskara. Right? You create good samskara. You start to change the consciousness and how you think. Because when you're dealing with something, you according to the chitta,
is how you're going to make your decisions. Right? The manas, of the mind, simply is collecting the information that the senses bring in. Right? But it's the chitta that chooses which of all that information I'm going to deal with. Right? And then then that will engage the intelligence to analyze it, and then based on my false ego, I'm going to make my decision. Yes.
Still like Prabhupada is, for example, explaining the main meaning of yoga is the control of mind.
Yes, but that means the chitta, not manas. So there's two aspects of mind. There's the mind as the element, because see, generally it's when we're counting the 24 elements, we always forget about the chitta, the polluted consciousness. But you see in third canto when they were discussing yoga, then he always, every purport and everything's always mentioning all four. So the subtle body means mind, intelligence, false ego, and polluted consciousness. But the consciousness is what's connected to the soul. These other things as we identify with, therefore we work with them. But the consciousness is what's actually ours. So if we purify the consciousness, we purify how we deal with the other 23 elements. Then our dealings will be perfect. So that's why of all of them, this achutatmatvam is the most important, that full surrender to the Lord, complete surrender to the Lord. If that's there, then our dealing with all the other elements will be perfect. We'll use the mind, the manas, we'll use the intelligence, the ego, we'll use the body made out of the five, the gross elements, the five senses, the sense objects. We'll use all that perfectly, right? The working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, we'll use it all perfectly. But if the consciousness is polluted, we won't. So everything's about consciousness. That's why it's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So of all the aspects, the Brahman is important. Of the Brahman, then this is the most important, and that's the name of our society. So you can see it's about developing that consciousness. That's what we're trying to do. Yes?
How should the forgiveness of devotees be like?
What should forgiveness be like?
Yeah.
Forgiveness means people do something that you don't like and you just have to let it go, because how will we see it? Mechanics of it is we take the lead from dharma, right? When Pariksit Maharaj is asking dharma, who has done this injustice to you? And dharma is saying that would be very hard to identify. Right? Because we could say I'm being beaten by this guy named Kali here. But the point is why is he beating me? Right? He's only beating because of my previous activities and the results of it. So technically he's only an instrument. So he's the external instrument that I can see, but actually what's doing the beating is the modes of nature. And the modes of nature are doing that simply because it's a reaction to my previous work. So technically, I would have to say I'm beating myself. So since we always forgive ourselves, then we can just extend that to others who are simply an instrument for our own, disturbance.
And if this instrument is devotee, so we should be also.
Don't worry. No, you can't worry about that. You can't deal with that. You have to work on. See, this will be the Varna side. You have to work by the ashram side, because that's the devotee side. The point is that you just have to see from there. It doesn't matter the devotee, not devotee, in that you have to let that go. Right? It doesn't mean in Varna when you're applying things that you don't remember, but it's not that you hold it against it. You just know, let's say you're managing, okay, this guy is not always trustworthy, and he may in this situation and that situation do things that are not right. So you just try to manage it so that that situation doesn't come up. So you remember it, but it's not that you personally don't forgive them. Does that make sense?
If all devotees would be like forgiving,
Then the world will be a better place. But the point is you can't control all the devotees. You can see, in other words, you can control the environment in which devotees are involved, but you can't actually control the devotees. You know what I'm saying? We have a concept in management, we control the people. No, you can control the environment. Because the people, then it's a matter of, are they serving Krishna or not? So you're trying to manage that you generate a conducive environment in which to do service. But every living entity is independent in that they can do or not. You don't have control over that. So it must be very clear what we're managing also. In other words, we're managing the environment and the mechanics of the environment, but we're not managing how people think and surrender to the Lord. We're only providing. Right? You have a saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Right? You have something like that, or that is your saying. I remember I was in Hungary, I mentioned about the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And they said, that's our saying. And I said, okay, so that's how we got it. Does that make sense? So therefore, from your own side, you have to forgive. Because you want to develop love for Krishna. You want to surrender to be dependent on Krishna. But as a service, if you're managing, then you're going to have that aspect of forgiveness so that you can actually work with people and engage people. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you aren't aware of their strengths and weaknesses. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that has to be considered. But that's from the Varna side. But from the ashram side, it has to be given out. Otherwise, it creates trouble. Okay? Yes.
You mentioned that we have to distinguish at the level of ashramas. Can you explain some, situation in a practical way by which way we are dealing with the ashramas?
Well, just like I said there, is that devotees, their identity has to be within the ashram side. Meaning that, and when I'm saying the ashram side, because I'm saying that's where sadhana and everything is. In other words, I'm a devotee. Right? And then within that, I situate myself in one of the ashrams, because that's the comfortable position to express my devotion as the secondary aspect. And then to maintain that, I have a varna. You understand? So in other words, the devotional is the primary. Then the ashram is where we situate ourselves, and then the varna simply is for maintenance of that. Does that make sense?
Is the distinguished devotees is all the time good only on the base of the ashramas?
Yes, it means for our personal development, we have to see there. It means, in other words, when we're talking about sadhana and these kind of things, Vaishnava etiquette, the dealings, and things that affect people's lives in the way of the devotional, then you're going to look at that side of it. How mature are they in Krishna consciousness? How well situated are they in their life? Does that make sense? So let's say you have the chance that, let's say, someone who they are nicely situated in their ashram, and mature, then you'll see their decisions will be very nice. Let's say they're well situated in an ashram, they're not so mature. On the material platform, they'll probably make good decisions. Now, let's say they are not well situated in their ashram, but they're spiritually mature, they'll still make good decisions. But if they're not well situated in the ashram and aren't mature, they will make bad decisions. Because the effect of their ashram will bother them. You know what I'm saying? They're not satisfied in their position, and they will that dissatisfaction will come through in their dealings with others. Does that make sense? Yeah, let's say like the man at home feels dissatisfied, so when he goes out and he's trying to do his management, then he'll be overbearing because he's trying to get control, because he can't get control in his house. He doesn't know how to deal with his wife, so he feels comfortable because he doesn't know how to deal with her. And because of that, he doesn't feel he has control. So you'll see he'll be overcompensating on the Varna side. So when he does a service, he will be over-controlling. Very annoying. You know, or in the home, the wife, she's not getting the same husband, he doesn't know how to deal. She's not getting the proper attention and that she requires. So therefore, if she's now doing management, she'll do exactly the same thing, but it'll all be about her. You know, people don't agree, then it's about her. It's not about the point, it's about her. You understand? So it won't work. So that's why if Varnasrama is there, then there'll be peace and prosperity. Because if you have a management meeting with those kind of people, it will not be prosperous. Because there's no peace. They can't work together. They can't make proper decisions because there's no peace. If there's no peace, there's no satisfaction. People who are satisfied can make good decisions. People who aren't are going to make it in favor of themselves. Though it won't be obvious because it's on the subtle platform. Because as we said, we've misconstrued what the Icha Shakti is. That it's our Shakti, not Krishna's. So if I'm satisfied, then it's good. You know, just like you have a group, they have a good meeting. They didn't fight. It was peaceful. They came to some. Everyone thinks it was a great meeting. But the problem is anything getting done? That's not looked into. It was a great meeting because they cooperated, which is a good point. It's nice. But it wasn't effective as a meeting because nothing got accomplished. You understand? So what's there? It's about my satisfaction. So they want to arrange meetings so that everybody's more comfortable, more cooperative, more this. So the focus is on how to make the meeting nicer, not how to get more done. You understand? So that's what happens is that we think this Icha Shakti is about us, not about Krishna. And so these dissatisfaction within Varnashram is what generates this. Through the lack of it. But because it's so subtle, we don't see that.
Can I ask for one example? We are now very often very focused that devotees are under any cost satisfied all the time. But generally we can see that nobody is satisfied. It means that we are focusing for this own energy, not for satisfying Krishna. Even though we are explaining to satisfy devotee means satisfy Krishna.
Yes, but it has to be about why do we want to satisfy devotees? Even we say, okay, I want to satisfy devotees. Why do you want to satisfy devotees?
Because we want to satisfy Krishna.
That's the point. If it's that. But if we want to satisfy devotees because devotees will be happy with us. You understand? Even though the etiquette, it may look exactly the same. But because pleasing devotees pleases Krishna, we will get good results. But because of that aspect of we're trying to do it for ourselves, from that part we'll get a bad result. So mixed means you're getting the good result of the pure devotional service, because devotional service is always pure. But the part that's mixed with it will get a bad result for it. So depending on how great the mix is how great a result we get. Bad. How great and pure we get good. You understand? And the main point of good and bad is what we were discussing before, is that are we affected by it or not? Because the material world always changes. It's not that I do devotional service perfectly. The material world will become a perfect place. What we're talking about here is peace and prosperity means that is you could say it's basically, like if we could say your life was 50% peaceful and 50% prosperous, would you consider that good? I'm saying compared to, modern scenarios. Yeah, so that's basically as good as it gets. So That's the Vedic. It's not that it's perfect. It's as good as it gets. Perfection is complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That makes it perfect. Does that make sense? So we have to understand is that we're talking about the Varnasrama because it will make it materially better. But that's a secondary aspect, because the material world will never be good. It will always have a defect. How much good is there? There will be that much bad. It's just the way it works.
That means that if Prabhupada explaining that only pure devotee can see all the living entities in the same form.
Yes.
It means he's seeing all good for everybody.
Yes. Yes. When he's also just seeing them as the soul. See, mode of passion means you see different souls differently. You know, souls from this country are nice, souls from this country are not nice. You understand? That's mode of passion. Or groups. Oh, you know, this group is nice, but this social group is not nice. Or, you know what I'm saying? When you see according to demographic and identify the living entity according to the demographic, then that's the mode of passion. Because then you're thinking the soul is that. But the actual mode of goodness is you see all of them the same. The conditioning is according to the demographic. But the soul is not. That's why then you could preach to anybody. That's why it said this. The Uttamadhikari can preach to anybody because he sees beyond. Well, it's recommended that the Madhyama doesn't preach to everybody. They make this distinction. Right? Those who are innocent or the devotees, you preach to them. Those who are not inclined, you don't. But someone like Prahlad Maharaj, he can preach to his demon father. You know what I'm saying? So you have cases where these Uttamadhikari preachers preach to people that a Madhyama would not preach to, and they get effect. That's just because of their nature. Because anything that anybody says, they can see it in connection with Krishna consciousness and therefore give a proper reply. Well, the Madhyama can do that fairly well, but it's according to their, you know, of course, Krishna's mercy, the realization, but their skill at it. Well, the neophyte tends to have less skill. So it goes, as long as it goes textbook, it goes really well, but if someone comes up with a question you didn't think about, then you're kind of stumped. All right, well, the Madhyama can think on his feet there and get around, but the Uttama, there isn't anything that anyone can say that they don't see in connection to Krishna, so they'll always bring up the Krishna conscious point. It's not an intellectual thing, it's not that. It's just, that's how they see. So they don't have to be great scholars, like you see Gorka Shornas Babaji Maharaj. He couldn't read. He'd have books, but he couldn't read. He'd get people to read for him. Right? But it didn't matter who came, he could speak with them and give them Krishna consciousness. Right? Does that make sense? So that's the, yes.
Maharaj, you just previously mentioned that devotional service is always pure, but according to what our intents, that the result will be also bad.
It means mixed devotional service means something material is mixed with pure devotional service. Right? So when we say pure devotional service, it means it's just pure devotional service. When there's pure devotional service and material desire, we call that mixed devotional service. You know, it's just, does that make sense? Yeah. So that's the point. So it's not that the devotional service itself is something less. It's that we've mixed it with something, so we're getting two effects at once. Right? If you're just getting the effect of pure devotion, that would be more powerful. But if you're getting pure devotion and something material, the results are mixed, so you're going to get less. Does that make sense? Because again, we have to understand we're not the center. Because the general tendency is we make ourselves the center. And therefore, we're the authority, we set the standard rather than the acharyas. Just like when we say, someone's chanting Nama Bas, what does that mean? Right? It means it's the shadow of the holy name. But what does that mean? The holy name is a shadow? Or our understanding of it, realization is a shadow? Does that make sense? Because then we're saying, I control the holy name. Holy name's independent. The holy name is Krishna.
whether you see Krishna as Krishna or not, that's another thing. But it's still Krishna. So Namabhas is us, not the name. You're chanting in Namabhas. You're not chanting Namabhas. You understand? So that's important, because otherwise it's no, you can't this, that. But the holy name is the holy name. He's independent. That's why you have the guy, we're doing Harinam down the street, and the guy on the other side of the street, you know, with all the punks standing over there and all that, going, Hare Krishna, and they're laughing and this and that and joking, and they're all, Hare Krishna, like that. They're all getting, you know, Agyata Sukriti there. Right? Even though they're laughing and they're joking about the devotees and think they're a bunch of idiots, but the point is they're getting Namabhas. Because the holy name is the holy name. And the fun part is someone in that group hears that guy saying Hare Krishna in a derisive way, and he gets the effect in a pure way, and he becomes a devotee. You understand? This is the holy name. It's not us. We too much say, no, but you know, you have one name of the Lord can remove all the sin of the universe. Right? But we're thinking, no, but unless it's pure, and this, the name can do that. We're the restrictive element. You understand? We have to understand the glory of the holy name. Because otherwise then we say, oh, it's only qualified. Then that means that's the offense against the holy name of thinking it's exaggeration. When you say one name, we mean one name. The guy in the street, the nonsense on the street says once Hare Krishna. In this lifetime, he can't commit enough sin that hasn't been removed. But because we think the material world has substance, no, he's sinful, he's this, he's that. So, no, but in his dream he saw a tiger and then, it did this and it did that, so the guy's a total nonsense. Can I base it on that? You had a dream, and it was a weird dream. So now can I judge everything about your life and how you fit in society because of your dream? Yes? No? No. Why? Because the dream's an illusion. So the conditioning is an illusion. So to get so caught up in this one, this, and that one, that's illusion. So why would we give the material energy so much meaning? Right? That's the whole problem. We think, oh, this one did that, that they're eternally damned, That means, so are we supposed to be mundane like this? Everything's so external? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have to understand what we're dealing with. That's the whole point of this discussion. One wants to be a leader, one has to be a leader in Krishna consciousness. And then see how to apply that mechanically into management. If one doesn't have that basic faith in the holy name and the devotional process as the primary element, then what are you leading? You know what I'm saying? I mean, who's that big? You know what I'm saying? Big, something. Who's that big? One or two can move a little bit here and there. So the whole thing is you understand Krishna, then everything works perfect. Because if we're going to go by our material qualification, who's got qualification? In India, a standard, solid businessman has 10,000 people that work for him. That's standard. And the ones that are bigger have more. But I mean, saying a good, solid business, he has got 10,000 people working for him. In the West, how many businessmen have 10,000 people working for him? Probably not a lot. We're talking about it's his business. We're not talking about a corporation where he's a CEO and there's a board. We're talking about he owns a business. It's his business. And he's got 10,000 people working for him. This is not an exaggeration. And that's the standard in India. You know? Who in the West have you heard of that's got that much? Huh? Okay, Nokia. But is there one guy that owns it? No, so that's the whole thing. So, how big are people? What is their qualification? You understand? Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Like how we develop faith in the Holy Name?
How to develop faith?
Yeah.
Means we use the intelligence. Right? Proper association. And we keep good association and we use our intelligence. Because by intelligence you can see, okay, this is correct. You know, in other words, Krishna consciousness is the correct thing, illusion is not. And then by good association, by practice, then it all develops. In other words, faith develops by Krishna's grace, by Krishna's mercy. That's why it's called causeless mercy. It's not that we did something to deserve it. You know, I bought my Bhagavad Gita, I deserve faith. You know? So in a sense, no, as you please Krishna, you get faith. Right? So, and you please Krishna through the devotees. So serving the devotees, working with the devotees, that makes sense. Understand? Yes.
Maharaj, I just wanted to check if I got it properly. In that given example, when the devotee takes care about another devotee just to get appreciation, mentality is the same when the devotee serves Krishna to be happy.
No, the mechanics are the same. Mechanics are the same, the mentality is different.
But
see, the mechanics are Shankarshan.
yeah.
The mentality is Prajumna. So in other words, Prajumna defines your ultimate goal. Sankarshan defines the shorter goals.
But mentality in that term, that anyway, I want something, end result, I want for myself in both cases. Appreciation or happiness.
No, one is I'm pleasing Krishna. It's Krishna's happiness.
Yeah, but I'm pleasing Krishna to become happy.
So that's mixed devotional service.
Yeah, this is my point. This is what I said, that mentality is...
Yes, but one is a higher mixed devotional service than the other.
Yeah, but the principle is that...
Yeah, if it's about ourselves, it's mixed.
Yeah.
If it's just about Krishna's satisfaction, then that's pure.
But, and in both cases, if I'm trying to please a devotee, then naturally he will appreciate me. So if
that's what it's saying. Is if you're doing the top, the others automatically come.
And the same with Krishna.
Yeah. The point is if you're taking care of the spiritual, the metaphysical and the physical are already taken care of. Because the spiritual is going to affect the metaphysical. The metaphysical is going to affect the physical. So if you have pure consciousness, then the subtle body and the gross body are automatically taken care of. Does that make sense?
Therefore,
because the mechanics are the same. So what we're talking about is elevating the consciousness. Technically we're not actually focused on the mechanics. We're only mentioning the mechanics because we think the mechanics are so important. If everybody was totally absorbed in pure devotional service, you don't even need Varnasrama, because everyone's Paramahamsa. But we do notice that with a focus, let's say, these days on community, community means individuals who require material facility. So since you're dealing with material facility, you want to use Varnasrama to structure that so it goes very peaceful and prosperous. Right? But if everybody could just sit down and chant Hare Krishna and wouldn't worry about anything else, you don't really need any structure. You understand?
So that's why you could see, you know, that 60s, early 70s, you could function without Varnasrama, because everybody was just basically working on the Paramahamsa level. Though the realization wasn't, but basically the faith and commitment was. But as soon as they expand and people want position and facility and authority and all these kind of things, then immediately you have to introduce Varnasrama. Because that structures it. You know what I'm saying? If everyone's just sitting around and chanting, you know, then, and not worrying about eating, you don't need a kitchen. But if people are worrying about eating, you need a kitchen. Because it structures it. Like Madhavendra, he's just sitting and chanting. And Krishna himself personally comes and brings some milk. Right? You understand? Because Krishna will take care, but he'll take care how he likes to. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we will, but we want it to be how we want it. Just like it's just like this. The parent, when they're taking care of a very small child, what does the child eat? It eats when it needs to eat, but it eats what the parents give it. Right? But as they grow up a little bit, then, you know, so they're going to be taken care of, but then the kid would rather have something else. Right? They're hungry. What do they want? They want some sweets. Right? And if it was up to them, they'd just eat sweets all day. Right? But if it's up to the parent, they're not going to eat sweets all day. You understand? So that's the thing, is we want all the material facility and everything like that, but Krishna will give what we require. So when that's there, it's just what Krishna will give, then we don't really need this system. But when we want something specific, then you have to fit in. Does that make sense? So when you're dealing with and because as a preaching mission, you're always going to be dealing with those who are just coming into Krishna consciousness. So they're going to be starting where that social element is important. Therefore, as a society, using Varnasrama becomes important. Right? Does that make sense? From that side. From the other side, from the principle of it, is that the consciousness that you have, that generates the particular form that you use to serve Krishna. Right? Mother Yashoda has a particular affection for Krishna that generates the form that she has, that she serves Krishna through. Right? But here, what is her consciousness? Right? Why are we here in the material world? Because of our love for Krishna? No, because of our trying to fulfill our own desires. And that's generated a form. So, Mother Yashoda uses the form she has to please Krishna. So what we're asked to do is, whatever form we have, we use that to serve Krishna. So technically what we're being asked to do is the same thing that the residents in Vrindavan do. The residents of the spiritual world. We're just being asked, like Mother Yashoda uses her form in Krishna's service, we use our form in Krishna's service. How it's been generated is opposite. The principle is the same. My consciousness generated the form, but hers is her connection to Krishna's generated the form. Mine is my connection to my own senses has generated the form. Right? But I use the principle of engaging Krishna's service. Therefore, the Varnasrama system is about how to take your conditioning and connect it to the Lord. That's what Daiva Varnasrama is. It's that simple. So it's a simple, straightforward, Krishna-conscious method. It's the method of the spiritual world. It's eternal. That's why it's called Sanatana Dharma. And then we jump up and down and say, oh, it doesn't work, and this, and why do I have to fit in here? That. So just say, I don't want to engage my conditioning in the Lord's service. That's all you have to say. You don't like Varnasrama, you don't want to engage your nature in Krishna's service. That's all.
Because then it's, no, I want to engage my nature the way I want to engage it. And when I connect it to Krishna, nice, and when I don't connect it to Krishna, hey, that's my business. So that's not a very strong platform. So therefore the Varnasrama is very useful. Because we have material desire. And it's such a perfect system that when you transcend material desire, it still gives a nice form to function within. Right? Mother Yashoda still does her household duties as the queen of Vrindavan. Right? Cowherd boys do their thing, cowherd men, cowherd women, the gopis, the cows, the grass. Right? The grass is not going, hey, why does everyone walks on me, this and that? I want to also, go out and dance with Krishna. I mean, they don't say that. They're happy to be grass. Does that make sense? So that's the whole thing, is it's so perfect that the system works for picking one up from the material world, situating yourself in goodness, but when you get to pure goodness, it still functions. But on the material side, one will give up so many things if it's not necessary. So how much is necessary you keep. Right? So let's say someone becomes a Paramahamsa as a Grihastha. He still keeps the form of the Grihastha ashram. That extra things that are not necessary, he gets rid of. Like maybe a skateboard, or, stuff that really he doesn't need. Right? But if he comes to that platform as a vanaprastha, as a sannyasi, then anything that connected, that'll be given up. So whatever's useful, then that's what's kept. But at the same time, as if you have more desire outside of what is actually essential, Varnashram governs that so that it matches nicely. Does that make sense? Let's say if a Grihastha had 50 sets of clothes, or 100 sets of clothes. Is there anything to really complain about? They're a Grihastha. Okay, it's a lot of clothes, but hey. I remember my father had 30 pairs of shoes. They all looked the same to me. But somehow or another, to him they were different. They had 30 sets of pairs of shoes. What do you do with 30 pairs of shoes? I had one pair of shoes. So, but as a Grihastha, who's going to complain? But now, as that Grihastha, let's say he becomes more advanced, he may find out, actually, I only need 10 sets of clothes. So then he'll either get rid of them, give them in charity, or do something with them, and then he'll keep 10 sets. But still, 10 sets is a lot. He's a Grihastha. He needs for various occasions, various situations. But if he's a brahmachari, then he has 2 sets of clothes, 3 sets of clothes, and then he's good. And they're all the same. Yeah. Like that. So you just keep it down to essentials. So it works. It can accommodate more. It can accommodate non-essentials. But at the same time, it can also accommodate, bring it back down to essentials. That's why the Varnashram system is so perfect. So this tendency that individuals see fault in the Vedic system is because they just don't understand it. It's the most sophisticated, most perfect system because it comes from Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnya Maya Shishtam Gunakarma Vibhagasa. The 4 divisions of human society were created by the Supreme Lord, according to the 3 modes of nature, and the work ascribed to them. Right? The modes of nature, they have their nature. What they do, goodness, passion, ignorance, they have work ascribed to them. And so therefore, then the Varnas, then they have the work that's ascribed to them because of the modes. Right? Brahmins in goodness, Kshatriyas in passion and goodness, Vaishyas in passion and ignorance, Shudras in ignorance. These are the predominant modes. Does that make sense? So it's what's predominant. It's not like the floor. What color is the floor?
Color?
Yeah.
Yellow.
Yellow, okay. But it's got brown in it, it's got white in it, but the predominance will be yellow. Does that make sense? You know, like that. So anything like that you can take and say, you know, what it is. You understand? So the point is the predominance. When we say Shudras and ignorance, that means that's the predominance. But the rest of it, there may be more goodness. Let's say like a musician, there'll be more goodness. You know, someone, let's say, is a blacksmith, there'll be more ignorance. You know what I'm saying? It just depends upon what's there. Does that make sense? So they themselves, they have that within their own personal character and everything like that. So then it comes to the point where they're transcendental, but the conditioning still works by those modes. So they still do the work that they do. But they're able to see Krishna and do everything connected to Krishna. So therefore it's a perfect system. So it's a matter of understanding the system and appreciating the system. Then one can apply it.
Why is it during the conversation the principle of watering the roots or reaching the higher that then fulfills lower, it's so obvious, but why it is so difficult to apply this principle during one's life?
Because we don't see one as, yeah, I mean there's knowledge and then there's practice of that knowledge. That means it's just like anything. Let's say business, okay? Buy something cheaper than what you sell it for. Would that kind of sum it up?
No, to get profit.
Yeah, to get profit. Right? To get profit, I have to be able to sell something, you know, at a greater cost than my investment. And if you follow that, you'll be successful. Right? Now, all the different situations, what you buy, what situations, how you sell it, who you sell it to, now these are all details that are going to take practice. So if you have the principle, then you apply yourself, you will get to it.
But that is more complex than, let's say, if I want appreciation, just don't think about to getting appreciation, just take care about that the person and the person will appreciate you.
Yes.
So,
but that's subtle, and then more subtle is I do everything to please Krishna, and then I'll automatically get appreciated. Because the point of being appreciated, I want to be happy, but if you please Krishna, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So if that comes through the meaning of others appreciating you, then fine. So that's the thing, is that we have three levels. I'm directly working to get the appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working to please the other person so I get the appreciation. And I'm working to please Krishna, which has the same form as trying to please others, and I get appreciation. So in other words, there is the aspect that I'm just doing that things for myself. Then there's just because I want to do it. Then we're doing things because that's the way we're supposed to do it. Right? Then we're doing things because, why are we supposed to do it that way? Because it pleases Krishna, so we're trying to please Krishna. So the Varnasrama, you follow it, it pleases Krishna because it's come from Krishna, you followed it. But if your motive is not to please him as a person, you only get partial benefit. Because if I'm following it because I'm supposed to, that's Brahman and Paramatma platform. So I get the result of worshipping the Lord on that level. Right? And so the results I get are only that much. But if I do it because I want to please him as a person, then I'm dealing with the Bhagavan level. That platform's unlimited. Right? Because the other two are limited by my scope of understanding, my ability in it. But if you're dealing with Bhagavan, it goes way beyond. You know what I'm saying? The benefits you get by doing it to please Krishna are way bigger than if you're doing it because it's my duties or I'm doing it to please myself. It's much greater because Bhagavan is the origin.
I accept that. My question was, but why even on these lower levels, it is, although it's obvious from the theory, as I mentioned, just take care about other person and that person will appreciate you for that. why it is so difficult, and we put it, I want appreciation on the first
Yeah,
level.
but because it's lack of how you say, development. Because, see, theory has to be applied. And from application we get understanding, for further application we get realization, right? So, we just think that if I just do it, I get. Right? That's how self-help seminars or any of these make so much money. Because people think if I just know it, I have it. Right? But when they go out to apply it, it doesn't work. So now what? The next seminar comes along, you know? The 8 qualities, right? And then when people get tired of that, then the 9 qualities, you know, you can just go on forever. Right? You know, of course he'll die before, you know, probably get many more qualities. But the point is it'll get him through his life. Right? He'll be fine. Right? So we have to, it's the application that gives the understanding, gives the realization. Like that. So that's the thing, that we have to accept that it takes practice. Anything takes practice. Okay. To be influential in battle, unconquerable, patient, challenging, and charitable, to control the bodily necessities, to be forgiving, to be attached to the Brahminical nature, and to be always jolly and truthful. These are the symptoms of the Kshatriya. Somehow or another, these ones always get lost. Okay, so we see is that saying influential in battle means you have to be able to, means that's the whole point is influence. Means whatever it is, if it's an actual battle or if it's you know in a meeting, political, you have to be able to have influence. How you'll have influence, right? Unconquerable means you know that this is correct because this is what the Brahmin said, this is what Shastras say, this is what pleases Krishna, so you're going to do that. You're going to be fixed. So that's the things that can't be wavering. Right? Patient means it takes time. Like I mentioned once, it was very interesting. I saw over 5 years in the GBC meeting, this one devotee brought up a subject matter. It was unanimously shot down. No one liked it. Unanimously. This is like crazy. Then, you know, they gave all the points and that, and then he worked out how to rephrase everything so that people could understand it better. Next year is, you know, basically, you know, shot down again, but, you know, a few people could understand a little bit. It went like this. After 5 years, when it was presented, unanimously accepted. That's patience. It took them 5 years, but they got it done. From unanimously, no one liked it, to unanimously, this is great. That's patience. So that was good. Challenging and charitable. So that means how you say it? Charitable is because the point is if it's about protecting and being kind, then there's always going to be the aspect of sharing. But it's not just a sentimental sharing. It's according to what people actually require. Because the government requires a certain amount to run. So if the government doesn't have, you can't. So there's a certain amount you give. But once personally, then that's another thing. Personally, you can give away everything. That's the thing. The government needs a certain amount. But you personally can give away everything. So this is something unique. Because you see, Vaishyas are supposed to be charitable, but they can't be that charitable. Because the Vaishya will never give charity where it may be bad for himself personally. Well, the Kshatriya can. Because he's only having facilities because of his application in governance. But if he's not doing governance, what does he need anything for? That's why then he has to be attached to the Brahminical nature. Because basically Kshatriyas are Brahmins who just have that mode of passion and, you know, want to make it happen. Like that. That's the uniqueness there.
to control bodily necessities, because if you can't control the bodily necessities, how do you get anything done? Right? You know, you're in a meeting, you step out at that moment and go to the bathroom, then, you know, at that point, then everybody, okay, he's out of the room, you know, and then when you come back in, you find out, you know, everything's changed. You have to be able to control everything. You don't eat, you don't this, you don't that. You have to be comfortable with that, because that's what's required to get things done. To be forgiven means, because otherwise that means personally, as we mentioned, as far as the government goes, then you know someone's nature. But then personally, like I said, that the king, if a citizen comes up and blames him for something that goes wrong, he doesn't feel bad about it, because he's supposed to protect him. So why is he feeling bad? Because he's not protected. Just like Arjuna, when that Brahmin came and said, you know, what are these kings doing? They're all useless and this and that. And Arjuna asked, why, what happened? You know, my cows are being stolen. You know, here are the great court of the kings, and my cows are being stolen by bandits. You know, 10,000 cows. This isn't like one guy comes in, steals a cow, and runs off. This is 10,000 cows. That's organization, right? That's organized crime, right? You know, you know, to get away with 10,000 cows, that's serious, you know. You know, so he's coming blamed, but Arjuna doesn't say, hey, we're the kings, you can't speak like that. It's no, he's a citizen, so therefore, okay, so I have to correct this. You know? It's just like, let's say the baby is there and is upset with the mother, and the baby's beating the mother. Does the mother care? Is the mother going, what, you can do this, you're my baby, I'm the mother, how can you beat me? No, she doesn't. So that's the hope, that's the meaning of forgiveness. Like that. To be attached to Brahminical culture, we mentioned, to always be jolly and truthful. So, point is truth means it's based on Shastra. That's the actual truth. But you are intelligent that you don't say facts based on Shastra to the wrong people. See, that's the difference. The modern is truth means facts, but actually truth means Shastra. Facts are reserved for who deserves to know particular facts. That's just the way it is. People can jump up and down and say how they like, but certain people deserve to hear certain facts and certain people don't. It's just the way it is. They have qualification. You can't tell all the facts to everybody. You know, it's just the way it is. So that's where your diplomacy comes in. So you have to know what facts to tell who. But everything's based on Shastra. Everything's based on Shastra. So that's truth. And jolly means that, you know, because you always have a goal, you always have something. So therefore you're always confident, you're always comfortable. It's only when you don't have a goal, then you lose direction. The kings have to have very long-term goal. You know, they're supposed to, in other words, if you're supposed to be maintaining the citizens, then it's always about that. So anything that comes up, you deal with it. That's what I always found very interesting in many times dealing with good managers, is that something comes up, I go, oh man, this comes up, and this is crazy. And that kind of thing is like, well, why are you saying that? It means, management means things go wrong, and that's what you're doing. You're taking care of, you're correcting what's wrong, right? And so, why there's an anxiety? You know, remember there was a flood in Mayapur, and then, you know, all the gardens and everything like that, and they're saying, wow, you know, we lost all these nice gardens and this and that. And then the manager turns to me and goes, why you lament for something you have no control over? We don't have control over the flood. So the point is that when the flood goes down, we fix it, that's all. So we just, you know, wait until the flood goes away. You know? And so then it's like, you know, it's a very different mentality, very far out. So they're always, you know, saying a good point, because the point is now there's something to do. You know? So very different. So that's the things, the mentalities of these are all so different. You know, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, but they're all compatible. That's the whole perfect thing. You know? They're all compatible. Like they had a table setting, right? You know, you have these, you know, taller glass, the shorter glass, you've got, you know, varieties of knives and forks and spoons and plates and all that and that. But each one is totally different than the other. Right? But they're all compatible. But you have to know what does what. Right? Like that. So
You know, you want to say something, you don't pick up the knife and start hitting the napkin. You know, right? You pick up the fork and hit the glass. Right? So like that. Yeah. Okay. These are the symptoms of the Kshatriya. Being always devoted to the demigods, the spiritual master and the supreme Lord Vishnu. Endeavoring for advancement in religious principles, economic development and sense gratification, dharma, artha, and kama. Believing in the words of the spiritual master in scripture, and always endeavoring with expertise in earning money. These are the symptoms of Vaishya. Right? So, why are we talking about all these things here is that they have this faith in all these things. Because where does profit come from? Good work or bad work? Good work. Good work is defined by what? Religion or irreligion? Religion. So therefore, Vaishyas like religion because it's prosperous. You understand? So they will always think along that line. Right? So here, because they're attached to Brahminical culture, the Kshatriyas means they see things on that platform. The spiritual, the metaphysical, you know, the rules and regulations. But here it's about that there's always that kind of external view of all these devotees. Like you go to the Vaishya's house and have a nice altar, they'll have nice this and that, they're going to take care of guests, and do everything very nicely like that. Because that's the prominent thing they have to do. Because other than that, they're doing business. Right? Does that make sense? But the Kshatriyas, they're basing everything they do upon what the Brahmins say. But here it's that they always have to be devoted to, means it has to be that form, that external show. Because then that makes it, because business means it's about the external show, right? You want the money, right? And you should be able to see it. So therefore you should be able to see that endeavor into religious activities. Does that make sense? Because that will, as we said, there always has to be the balance. Right? You know, because if you don't have that balance, it doesn't match through the whole thing. You can't. It's hard to maintain the mentality. Okay, how are we doing here? Okay, I think we'll stop here and then start a little bit, and then we'll continue with these details.